President Jason. So it is my pleasure to welcome back to speak to us today, Senator Win Stoller. Win is a fellow Rotarian who's a past president at Downtown Rotary and a Paul Harris Fellow. Win grew up in Germantown Hills, and after graduating from the University of Illinois with a degree in accounting and an MBA, he returned to the Peoria area and was an auditor with Price Waterhouse for a few years before joining the family business Widmer Interiors. So Win's the CEO of Widmer and also my business partner, along with being my brother-in-law. So we know each other pretty well. Besides being a Rotarian, Win, who is a recipient of the 40 Leaders Under 40, has volunteered with many great organizations over the years, including Salvation Army Advisory Board, Peoria Chamber Board, Business PAC of Central Illinois, his church, and ISU's College of Business Advisory Board. In 2021, Win became an Illinois State Senator and began his political career. Senator Stoller has proven to be effective in a very short time in Springfield, passing 15 pieces of legislation, including a significant tax cut for small businesses. In 2021, Stoller's tax cut allowed 48,000 small businesses to shield over $2 billion of income from federal taxation. So Win and his beautiful bride Amy have 2 adult children, and in his free time, Win enjoys training and competing in triathlons. For any triathletes in the crowd, he is an Ironman. Let's all give a warm welcome to Senator Win Stoller.
Thanks, Frank, for that introduction, and it's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for the opportunity to share a little bit with you. It was about 2 years ago, September 12th, 2021. It was after 9 p.m. It was dark outside. I remember my feet hurting and my legs were screaming at me. I was nearing the end of Ironman, Wisconsin. That morning I woke up at 3:30. I started my race at 7:30 with a 2.4 mile swim, and that was followed by a hilly 112 mile bike ride that took me 6.5 hours. And now after almost 13 and a half hours, I was finally approaching the end mile 26 of the marathon. I was completely exhausted, but I was almost finished. I rounded a corner and I saw I just had about a quarter mile to go, and I could start to hear the crowd at the finish line and the pulse of the finish line music, and there was a large crowd, and I could hear the announcer saying to the finishers, "You are an Ironman," as they crossed the finish line. And with all that excitement, the pain kind of went away, and I made my way down the last few blocks, and I started to reflect on the journey that got me to this point. First, how absolutely crazy it felt when I signed up for the race. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what have I just done when I clicked the send button on the registration form? Then, there's hundreds of workouts. I had to overcome a couple injuries. There was just the time, investment, and support, and all that it took just to get me to the starting line of that race. But when I finally crossed the finish line, I decided, you know what? It was all worth it. As I was training for that race in the summer of 21, I did a lot of workouts by myself. And when you're doing some longer workouts, a long bike ride might take 4 or 5 hours. You have a lot of time just to think and process stuff. And that summer, I was also a freshman senator. So naturally, I found myself thinking about my new role in state government and what it takes for Illinois and our communities to succeed. And one question kept coming back to my mind. What does it really take for our communities to succeed? Now, our state government certainly plays a role in that. And it's definitely part of the answer, but ultimately I began to realize and believe that there's something even more powerful than that in helping our community succeed. And I believe that the power is in the people in this room and rooms like it all over the state. As I look around, I see leaders in our community stepping up to serve the community. As leaders, you're already leading by example. And I believe that that's what our state really needs. And I believe the real answer lies in all of us. So then another question hit me, and if my theory is correct and I'm right, and the answer is really all of us, then how do we make sure that we are making the most of our opportunity and maximizing our impact? Well, I think I was riding my bike in the middle of some country road when the answer to that question hit me. And the three of the principles that I was applying as part of my Ironman training, I started to realize really applied to answer that question. How do we maximize our impact in the community? So today, what I'd like to do, instead of a more typical Springfield update, I'd like to take a few moments and explore those three principles with you. Those three principles are: first, get out of your comfort zone. Second, small is powerful. And third, think long term. Okay, first, let's talk about getting out of our comfort zone. When I set a goal to do an Ironman triathlon, it definitely got me out of my comfort zone. Before that, I had only done much shorter races, and I had actually really serious doubts about whether I could even finish the race. I'm an average athlete in middle age, and it was just kind of that much of a stretch goal for me. But pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And my wife, Amy, and I found that out when our son was in 8th grade. In that case, it meant pushing him not towards sports, but towards singing in choir. Now, when he signed up in 8th grade, there was only 4 boys in that junior high choir. It wasn't exactly the cool thing for him to do, but we recognized he had a little singing ability, and turns out he absolutely loved it. In high school, he was in musicals and the madrigal group, and in college, he tried out and got accepted to the choir at Iowa State University, and that college choir did a European tour and sang in Carnegie Hall. So my son took an opportunity to get out of his comfort zone, try something new, took a bit of a risk, but he discovered something he loved and now can enjoy the rest of his life. But when we get out of our comfort zone, it doesn't always go so smoothly. I found this out the hard way. When I was just out of college in my 20s, I joined Rotary, the downtown club, and frankly, I was intimidated every week, almost scared to go to the meetings amongst all these older, successful strangers. But I wanted to push myself to get to know everybody else in the club. So one day, I sat down at a table next to this really, really, really old guy. Well, he seemed old then. I was in my 20s. He probably was maybe 70. He was just recently retired. And I sat down next to him, and I remembered that he used to work at Caterpillar. And I thought, well, that's good. I got something to go on. I'll use that to break the ice. And I said to him, Bob, what did you used to do at Caterpillar? And he paused for a moment. He just kind of smiled and very, very humbly said, well, I was president. I was very humbled, and I was terribly embarrassed because I knew everyone else in that room knew exactly who Bob Gilmore was, the recently retired president of Caterpillar. But when you get out of your comfort zone, you might make some mistakes, like I did. That's okay, because it's worth taking the chance. To have lasting impact on our community, it often means taking a chance. Success typically involves some risk and some sacrifice, and frankly, doing things that make us feel uncomfortable. We don't do it because we like being uncomfortable. We get out of our comfort zone because of where it might lead. The first principle is having that courage to step into a new arena and try something new. So I'm going to issue a challenge today, Consider setting a goal so big that it scares you. And if it doesn't scare you, at least a little bit, it probably isn't big enough. Okay, the second principle in unlocking our collective power is to remember that small is powerful. If you do set a big goal, maybe a goal that scares you a little bit, there's not an easy button that comes with it. You just hit the easy button, you're off the finish line all of a sudden. And it takes, in training for an Ironman, there's not like one workout that you only do that one workout, you can do the whole race. It's lots and lots of smaller, relatively easy workouts that just kind of build and build and build upon themselves. And of course, there's some long rides and some long runs that you need to do, but the real key is the consistency of those smaller workouts that just kind of build and build on each other. Well, to help myself be consistent, I ended up developing a very simple, tiny little habit that proved to be incredibly effective. And that is, I would just simply set out my workout clothes the night before. It kind of helps in the early morning when you're getting ready, and it kind of plants that expectation in my brain that I want to do that, tomorrow morning. And it's also just kind of a guilt avoidance strategy, because I know if I skip my workout and my clothes are still there on the floor when I get back, they'll be there judging me. So it's become a habit for me to set out my workout clothes and a habit to do my morning workout. Well, this is something that I'm learning. Simple, small little habits like that eat good intentions for breakfast. Remember, success isn't all about one thing, one big day or one big effort. Small things are powerful. It's the consistency of those small habits that gets results, because small, consistent habits will eat our best intentions for breakfast. Well, let's think for a moment. What is one of the smallest, easiest habits that we could all implement, that if we all did consistently, has the power for incredible impact on our communities? Well, there's probably many of them, but I'd like to offer one suggestion. Encourage somebody. Our words are so incredibly powerful. In the Bible, James chapter 3 speaks about the power of the tongue and how it can affect the whole course of a person's life, either positively or negatively. In my own life, I can remember specific comments from like 30 and 40 years ago that my parents, teachers, coaches said to me that encouraged me or challenged me, helped me continue to go on when I wanted to give up. Some of those comments were so impactful, I can still remember exactly where I was and exactly how I felt when I heard them. I think I was probably 7 years old on our front porch when my dad said, "Win, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up." Now, he doesn't even remember saying that, but I do. That's the power some words can have on a person's life. There's a great movie from the 90s. It's kind of a hidden gem. It's one of those that tugs at your heartstrings. It's really inspiring. It's called Mr. Holland's Opus. Maybe some of you remember that movie. And please don't tell anybody, but I may have cried just a little bit at the end of this movie. But Mr. Holland is a music teacher, but he always dreamed of being a professional musician. But he settled into his teaching role for over 30 years, and in one scene, he's trying to help an awkward little redheaded girl who was just really struggling to play her instrument, and he could see that she knew the notes and she had the skills, but she was paralyzed by her fear of failure. And Mr. Holland saw this, so he sat her down and said, "When you look in the mirror, what is one thing you really like about yourself?" And she said, "Well, my red hair. My dad always says my red hair is like the sunset." So he looked at her and said, "Then play the sunset." and it just clicked. She closed her eyes and played beautifully. From that point on, her entire demeanor changed. She had confidence now. Mr. Holland had taken that time to understand her and speak some crucial, encouraging words. And with her new confidence, she became not only a great musician, but a great leader as well, and was eventually elected governor of her state. And at the end of the movie, she returns to the high school as governor to honor Mr. Holland. And he is stunned at the words he barely even recalled saying had such a positive long-term impact on her life. Our words can be so powerful, and people are starving for encouragement. But of course, I get it, right? Not every time we encourage somebody are we going to change their life. I understand that, but let me ask you this question. What other little habit could we implement that has that kind of potential? And this is something we can all do, right? And yes, if we are all able to establish a consistent daily habit of speaking some kind, encouraging words, that habit will not only eat our best intentions for breakfast, but it has the power to change our communities. The poet Maya Angelou said, "People may forget what you did, people may forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Well, we talked a little bit about getting out of our comfort zones, and now we've talked a little bit about why small little habits can be so incredibly powerful. So now let's explore this last principle, think long term. If you decide you want to complete an Ironman triathlon, you don't just wake up one day and say, I think I'll do an Ironman next week. It takes a plan over months, sometimes even years, to build up the strength, endurance, and so forth to do the race. And in my case, it took a lot longer than that just to convince my wife to let me buy an expensive race bike. But in sports, we say short-term pain, long-term gain. In finance, we say invest for the future. In psychology, it's called delayed gratification. In 1972, Stanford did a famous experiment involving preschool children and marshmallows. Each child was placed in a private room with a marshmallow on the table in front of them, and they were told they could eat the marshmallow if they wished, but if they didn't, they would be rewarded with a second marshmallow. Well, it was a simple choice. One treat now or two treats later. Some kids jumped up and ate the marshmallow right away. Other kids licked it or sniffed it and set it back down. One kid banged his head on the table just to distract himself from avoid eating the marshmallow. These kids were then followed in long-term studies over decades. And those studies showed that the group of kids that were able to delay gratification by not eating the marshmallow had better outcomes in all aspects of their lives. Higher SAT scores, better physical and mental health, even higher incomes. This study is significant because it makes one thing crystal clear. The ability to delay gratification leads to success. So what does this principle look like when we apply it to community service? Well, as Rotarians, we have an excellent example. In 1985, Rotary launched Polio Plus. In the following decades, billions of children have been vaccinated against this disease, and it's now nearly eradicated from the face of the earth. Rotary had a plan. They invested for the future. It took some time, but boy, was that ever worth it. I like what Warren Buffett said. Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone else planted a tree long ago. As community leaders in a service club, you are already putting these principles into action. You have service projects teed up from the troops, literacy programs you read in schools, you have scholarship programs, community grants. Continue that great work. Yes, our state government is important. It has the ability to have significant impact on our communities, but I believe that there's something even more powerful, and it's the good people in this room and rooms like it all over the state. And frankly, if I'm ever given a choice of who's capable of having the most impact, I'm going to choose all of you over Springfield every single day of the week and probably twice on Sunday. But to unlock that power, we have to, and to maximize our impact, we have to continue to take risks, get out of our comfort zone, and set big goals, sometimes even scary goals. We have to be consistent with small habits to accomplish those goals. And we must keep a long-term perspective as we invest for the future. So on that note, I'm going to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite presidents, Teddy Roosevelt, and this is from his famous Man in the Arena speech. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, but who spends himself in a worthy cause. Who at the best knows high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, stay in the arena. Spend yourselves in a worthy cause and dare greatly.